what have we found in the previous episode? One of the heads of the ITP, Richard Miller, came out speaking about Fisetin not being effective against senescent cells, nor for longevity. This created controversy with other longevity experts such as Dr. David Sinclair, Dr. Paul Robbins, and Dr. James Kirkland.
You are periodically taking Fisetin and Quercetin aimed at senescent cells.
Myself, I'm on a maintenance dose. I take about 0.5 gram of each every day.
I take the senolytic Fisetin because we have shown it's safe in mice, and there's a number of clinical trials, and it seems to have a benefit. So I take Fisetin.
We also have seen that Dr. Brad Stanfield came about a year ago stating that he stopped taking Fisetin and Quercetin based on this very study, the ITP study. Yet we discovered that the ITP study wasn't published yet, but we did have a little data to interpret. So I asked in the comments, should I do data interpretation now or wait for the full study? Overwhelmingly, everyone wanted me to do it, even though I wasn't so happy to do it, but since I have a weak character, according to my mother, I have to succumb to the desire of my masters, you. Now, as we approach the study, what are we looking for? What are the critical questions that we need to answer? 1. Was Fisetin given with food or with water? If Fisetin was given in water, it will reduce Fisetin absorption. That's a mistake. 2. At what age it was given to mice? Removing senescent cells only benefits health and life expectancy over the age of 55 or 60 equivalent, which is about 24-27 months in mice. If they started the intervention sooner, they may not notice benefits only until the mice age. 3. What other parameters of health did they measure or examine? And 4. How did they measure the senescent cell burden? And 5. What dose of Fisetin did they use? Fisetin dose is critical when measuring the impact on senescent cells. Why? Fisetin is part of the polyphenol family. These polyphenols work via something called the tiebreaker system. What these molecules do is they make the DNA in your cells believe that there is stress around, a threat to the cell's survival. Then, in response, the DNA decides what to do based on the amount of stress. The DNA decides whether to make the cell stronger and survive for a longer time, or to kill it. And if we want to kill the cell, such as the case with senescent cells, we need to apply a lot of stress, meaning we need high dose of the polyphenol supplement, in this case, Fisetin. Let me put a short explanation about how this tiebreaker system works. This was taken from the resveratrol series. A tiebreaker is a method that you and I use to make important decisions quickly. You and I specifically use this tiebreaker decision making when we are making decisions using money and deciding what to do with resources in general. Our bodies and the DNA too use this tiebreaker method in making important decisions. One of those decisions is whether to help a stressed or damaged cell to live longer and repair it, or to get rid of the stressed cell and create a new cell instead. Both options are expensive for the body, and our bodies can only choose one. Now, I said the body is making the decision, but it's not really the body. It's truly the DNA that had its hand on the wheel. And here is how the DNA thinks. If there is a small amount of stress, the DNA is optimistic. It will decide to keep the cell alive. Expensive decision, but it will lead to the youthfulness preservation of the cell. However, if there is a lot of stress or damage, the DNA is pessimistic. The DNA thinks that if it's going to repair this cell with this large amount of stress, it still may not survive. Maybe it's a waste of resources. Here, the DNA decides to get rid of the cell and replace it with a new one. When the DNA sees low levels of resveratrol, it sees low levels of stress. So the DNA turns off bad aging genes and turns up good longevity genes. The DNA makes the decision for the cell to live longer. Longevity. When the DNA sees high level, high concentration of resveratrol in the cell, it sees high levels of stress, and the DNA becomes more pessimistic. It makes the decision to push the cell towards death. Let's kill the cell and create a new one with the parts and energy that we have saved. That makes sense. Now you can easily see why resveratrol will trigger different responses in different doses. So the tiebreaker system says that our bodies and cells respond differently to these polyphenols based on the dose that we are taking. Practically, it means that if we take low dose, it helps the cell to survive, but it won't push it to death if it's senescent cell. If we want to push cells to die, we need to take high doses of Fisetin to mimic an environment of high stress, which signals to the DNA this cell has to die right now. And experts such as Dr. Kirkland know this. Dr. James Kirkland has been researching Fisetin since early 2000. He knows too that we need high-dose Fisetin to target senescent cells. How much Fisetin is he using in his studies right now? Let's see one of his latest human studies.
The Fisetin trials, and it's to test the efficacy of senolytics. And there's a trial which is just beginning. It's going to be in when it's fully rolled out in 129 nursing homes across the United States. It's funded by the NIH, and this will be for patients who test positive or have tested positive for coronavirus who are nursing home residents.
So in this ongoing study that Dr. Kirkland has mentioned, they are trying Fisetin to kill senescent cells. This is because these cells, when accumulated, worsen our reaction to COVID-19. And the study, they are using 20 milligrams per kilo in human adults, which is indeed high dose. What is high dose and low dose? Well, based on my research, we can say that 15 to 20 milligrams of Fisetin is high dose, whereas 1 to 3 milligrams of Fisetin per kilo in humans is low dose, and it won't push cells to die. Now, our goal is to find out whether the ITP use a high dose Fisetin. Remember, the ITP goal, besides lifespan extension, was to check senolytic activity, to see activity of Fisetin against senescent cells. Now that we have all the investigative questions in our mind, we can look at the crime scene. And we have two data sources. One, the interview with Dr. Richard Miller, one of the heads of the ITP, and two, a summary of the study on the website of the ITP. Let's do some data interpretation and find a very interesting detail.
And we were given a drug called Fisetin, which allegedly is a senolytic, allegedly it removes senescent cells. We tried that at 2 different dose regimes. It also had no benefit. But then at the mice we gave it to, they also didn't have any deletion of senescent cells. We were neither able to reproduce the reported health benefit nor the reported change in senescent cells.
We know that Dr. Richard Miller said that Fisetin was tested in 2 dose regimes and did not kill senescent cells, nor conferred any lifespan extension in mice. Of course, we don't know how exactly they measured that, but what else do we know besides what he said? We have a summary on their website. So what do we see here? First, age at treatment initiation, which means when they began to give Fisetin to kill senescent cells. This happened at the age of 20 months. That's good. The greatest improvement in lifespan by reducing senescent cells burden is somewhere around 24-27 months. Not before, but still it's close enough. This is okay. In the interview, Dr. Richard Miller said that they used 2 dose regimes. Did the ITP use 2 different doses? No. They used the same dose, but just in 2 different regimens. The dose is clearly 600 ppm. Now that we see the dose, we know the timing of initiation of the treatment, and we know the results, the impact on senescent cells, and life extension, we have something to work with. Now, let's calculate the Fisetin dose they gave to the mice, and then convert it to humans. They stated on their website, on the ITP website, that the exact dose was 600 ppm. ppm doesn't tell us much. Can we convert this ppm into milligrams per kilo so we could make sense into the dose that we take of Fisetin? Yes, because on the top of their page, they're saying, I'm quoting, each compound is given in the diet at the following levels, part per million, ppm, which is defined as milligrams of agent per kilogram of food. What does this mean? First, the ITP put Fisetin into the mice food. That's good because it's going to increase the absorption of this polyphenol, as opposed to putting it in water. And 2, we know that 600 ppm means 600 milligrams of Fisetin for every kilo of food that the mice consumed. It also very important, it means that the dose is in relation to the food's weight, not the mice weight. This means that we have to do several steps in the calculation to convert ppm in the food of the mice into Fisetin dose per body weight in mice and then into humans. Therefore, we need to do the following steps. We need to know how much the mice weigh. Then, we need to know what's the weight of their food intake. Divide that and to get how much Fisetin they received per kilo of weight. Then, we need to divide this number by 12.3 in order to convert it to humans. So, what's the weight of the mice? Well, since the ITP hasn't published the paper, we don't know what's the exact weight of their mice, nor we know the weight of their food. But we are not going to give up. These estimate numbers are pretty much known. So what we're about to do here, we're going to use the weight of the average lab mice on a standard diet and the average weight of their food on a standard diet. A standard diet means that it's not ad libitum, eat as much as you want, but it's a controlled diet of the exact calories every day. So we can estimate on average how much they ate every day. And we're going to take the numbers from Dr. David Sinclair's study on resveratrol. I'm taking those graphs from the supplemental data of David Sinclair. Here, Dr. David Sinclair and his colleagues told us exactly how much the mice weighed and how much they ate in grams every week. So we said it's 600 ppm, 600 milligrams of Fisetin per 1 kilogram of food. This means that in 2.57 grams of food per day, they receive 1.54 milligrams of Fisetin. Now let's figure out how much Fisetin did they receive, the mice received, per kilo of body weight. So mice, they weighed 35 grams. They received 1.54 milligrams of Fisetin. By simple calculation, we can figure out that per 1 kilo of body weight, they received 44 milligrams of Fisetin. Now we can convert this to humans. So we need to divide the dose per body weight in 12.3 because mice have faster metabolism and different surface ratios. So by taking the 44 milligrams, dividing it by 12.3, we achieve a dose that is 3.58 milligrams per 1 kilo of human weight. The mice in the ITP study received in both studies, in both regimens, a dose of Fisetin that is equivalent to 3.58 milligrams per kilo in humans. Remember the number 3.58 milligrams per kilo of body weight. Let's compare this with what Dr. James Kirkland has been using in his studies to kill senescent cells in humans. 20 milligrams per kilo of body weight. This is a factor of 6. Practically, if a person weighs 70 kilos or 155 pounds and they want to target senescent cells, they need around 1.5 grams of Fisetin. However, the dose that was given in the mice study was equivalent to 250 milligrams for that same person. Can you expect 250 milligrams of Fisetin to target senescent cells? If you are part of a longevity community, you know that usually people are taking a much higher doses than that. Are you surprised it didn't kill senescent cells? I want you to double check me. This is what I have said in a previous video on Fisetin where I touched exactly this issue. Whether Fisetin kills senescent cells like this study showed or not, one thing is certain to me. Exactly like with resveratrol, different doses are going to work differently because they apply the stress tiebreaker like in resveratrol case. Meaning the dose of those supplements matters to what you try to achieve when you take them. So if we want to target longevity pathways, maybe we need to choose low doses in everyday use. But if we want to take quercetin and Fisetin to kill those senescent cells, maybe then we need to go up to 1 to 2 grams. Not understanding the doses of those supplements can create controversy too in the research world. If, for example, researchers will examine 100 milligrams of Fisetin and observe no effect on senescent cells, you can throw that study out of the window. It doesn't mean anything. By the way, you can find the link to this video in the description. The bottom line about the dose. It looks like the ITP made a mistake with their Fisetin dose, and they used low-dose Fisetin which should not work on senescent cells. Does this mean that high-dose Fisetin doesn't kill senescent cells? No. But that's not everything, because this is not the only thing they found in the study. Here is the big question. Cool, you would say, low-dose Fisetin doesn't kill senescent cells. Why hasn't Fisetin extend lifespan in the ITP study? Now we're going to connect it to the previous weakness that we spoke about ITP, the proclivity of mice to die from cancer, and the fact that the ITP, when they test lifespan in mice, they practically test cancer mortality reduction in mice. This means that the true question should be, should we expect low-dose Fisetin to reduce cancer in mice? Now we lack data about Fisetin, but we know how resveratrol, its polyphenol friend, works, and this is exactly what I said several months ago about resveratrol. I spoke about it after showing resveratrol positive impact on diabetes, strong bones, and better cardiovascular health. So why doesn't resveratrol increase maximum lifespan in healthy mice? This is what I said. How come resveratrol not extending lifespan in healthy mice, but does so in obese mice and potentially obese people? Because you cannot increase the maximum lifespan without reducing cancer and tumors. We want to stay young and alive at the same time. And cancer doesn't care how healthy and young the rest of the body is. It's just a defective cell that hurts the organization. These animals I showed you with the low resveratrol, they died with healthy younger bodies, but with tumors. So how can resveratrol increase the maximum lifespan of obese animals? Let's think about it. Obese animals die earlier because of cardiovascular disease and diabetes. And what resveratrol does? Resveratrol does protect the cardiovascular system, keeps the heart young, and reduces sugar levels. This way, low-dose resveratrol targets the exact reasons obese mice and probably obese people, die prematurely. Now you understand the mystery. Now you understand why obese mice and possibly obese people are very likely to live longer in their maximum potential on low resveratrol dose, but not necessarily healthy, thin people. Does that make sense to you? Back to Fisetin. I have to qualify everything that we hardly have any data on low-dose Fisetin. Just like with resveratrol, I believe that low-dose Fisetin might reduce cardiovascular disease, diabetes, and preserving young muscles and bones. However, all of that doesn't help the mice if they still die from cancer. But for humans, it does confer benefit. To corroborate this is a study that they used low-dose resveratrol on mice. They have seen younger bones, younger liver, but this is what they found in relation to cancer. I'm quoting, "There was also no decrease in spontaneous tumors at the time of the sacrifice. In particular, spontaneous liver tumors were abundant in mice fed the controlled diet or resveratrol, but rare in caloric restriction mice." They came up with the speculation. It is likely that the effects of resveratrol feeding at lower dose are distinct than those observed with higher doses. If indeed Fisetin is a senolytic, it can only kill senescent cells in high doses. 2. The ITP study indeed used low-dose Fisetin. As expected, it was ineffective against senescent cells. Therefore, their findings don't contradict anything that we already know. In fact, it supports the tiebreaker theory in how these polyphenols work. 3. As we have seen, you extend mice lifespan when you reduce cancer. Low-dose Fisetin, if it behaves similarly to resveratrol, it should not reduce cancer. And this is why it did not increase the mice maximum lifespan. Nothing unusual here. Our understandings are spot on. Now, what do I do with Fisetin and Quercetin? This is not a personal recommendation or advice to anyone. So remember, high-dose Fisetin and Quercetin are potentially senolytic agents. They potentially kill senescent cells. Do I take high-dose Fisetin and Quercetin? My thinking now is I'm too young for this. I'm 35, thin, and it's unlikely that senescent cell accumulation will be an issue. Especially that these cells play a role in good health, and my immune system is young enough to clear them. I spoke about my age, but obviously over the age of 60, these senescent cells begin to accumulate and cause problems. So my perspective will change when I'm going to be 55 or 60. The older I am, the more frequent I would take it. So maybe if I'm 70, of course consulting with my doctor first, I would take it every quarter. So the bottom line about what I do is pretty ironic. The irony of this is that Brad and I do the same thing, but we do that for opposite reasons. Brad doesn't take Fisetin and Quercetin because he thinks they don't work against senescent cells. I don't take high-dose Fisetin and Quercetin because I think they do work and I just don't need it right now. Now let's move to the low-dose Fisetin and Quercetin. Do I take low doses of Fisetin and Quercetin daily for health and longevity? Because I do take low-dose resveratrol. I suspect that low-dose Fisetin, somewhere around 50 milligrams or 100 milligrams per day, will have a synergetic effect with low-dose resveratrol because they come from different subfamilies of the polyphenol family. Based on my research, this suggests a good potential for synergetic effect between the molecules. However, I'm waiting for the full study by the ITB to be published before I make up my mind, and also I'm waiting for Dr. Kirkland human study to come out very soon. So in my routine, the jury is still out. But what do you do in the meantime? Not a medical advice or personal recommendation, but here is my take. Many people who have been taking Fisetin report increased energy or better looking skin. In a situation where Fisetin is unlikely to hurt your lifespan, in this case noticeable health benefits coming from Fisetin are pretty good case to take it. That's my opinion, but it's your body and your responsibility. This is Fisetin. What about Quercetin? Quercetin is one of the most powerful molecules I've ever encountered in longevity research. Yet it's poorly understood because it does 100 things at once. How does it work and how does it affect your body, your brain? We have enough research to reach conclusions. And we will try to answer these questions in the next episode of this Fisetin and Quercetin controversy. The third episode will take me some time because usually for every molecule or supplement that I publish video, I need to go over 100 or 200 studies at least to reach a conclusion that I feel certain about without flip-flopping later and confuse you. And now with my wife's stroke, it's going to take me a bit longer. And by the way, when you see studies that I quote in my research videos, these are just the highlights of many of these dozens, if not hundreds of studies that I've read. Most of the stuff I don't show in my videos because I don't want to bore you to death, and my number one goal is to simplify as much as possible, while showing you some of the pieces of the hard work done in the background. All the behind-the-scenes data is not as important as the habit based on the conclusion from this data. The habit, and not the data, is what gives you all the longevity benefits. And because it's difficult to implement habits for everyone, I'm giving you the top app that specializes in this exact problem, and a special bonus for me. In this app, you can find how to implement the habits easily and how to persist with them over the months and years ahead. Stick to the habits that you know are good for you. In that special deal with the app, you'll receive a bonus from me related to my supplement routine for free. Would you like to give it a try and see if it works for you? If so, go to wellnessmessiah.com/app. And until the next episode, remember, the correct data interpretation is everything.